Bottom of the Smash Mountain, Season 2, Episode 47, Achieving Melee Top 100. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Jesse and/or Cypher. Hey, look, you get it. Thank you so much for joining me. We have Ryobeat. That's right, we have Ryobeat joining us for the interview today that I am conducting in the thing in the words. Thank you for... Wait, hold on. I should redo this. No, wait, I shouldn't. I lost my train of thought there, but let's just say that this was a fantastic interview with Ryobeat, and I had a really great conversation with him, and I'm very excited to share that with you. We got some stuff we got to talk about after the interview's over, but for now, let's hear from Ryobeat. Why is it so quiet? Oh, right, transition. Here we are, bottom of the Smash Mountain, and today I'm so excited to be joined by Ryobeat, who you know as a fantastic peach, and BBats has once described as the best streaming peach in the world. Ryobeat, how are you today?
I am good. Thank you for having me on, Cypher. I did not know that BBats called me the best streaming peach. Is that, like, does he mean it in the way of, like, Twitter clips, or does he mean in the way of, like, I just, like, talk a lot and I'm, like, very, like, public as I play?
I should say specifically Twitch streaming. So I had BBats on the other week, and I was saying, wait a second, hold on. BBats, are you the best Twitch streaming peach right now? And he's like, oh, no, it can't be me. No, I don't want it to be me. And he's like, Ryobeat streams like once a month. There you go. There's your best. There's the best peach streaming or for Twitch streams. Yeah.
That's super funny.
So I wanted to start with just a little bit of an overview of Smash for you as a whole, because something that you had announced somewhat recently is that you'd be taking a bit of a step back to pursue your your career, your real life career. But can we talk a little bit about how you got into Melee and that sort of stuff?
Sure, that sounds good. So I've been playing for a really long time. So I've been playing since... So I probably was like wave dashing at some point in 2011, but I consider my first start as Apex 2012. It's the first time I was like in the Smash community in general. And like starting young and being young in general, like I'm 23, I don't consider age 0 to, I don't know, 9, 10 as conscious years. I'm just kind of still, I'm still underdeveloped as a 14-year-old, but less developed. I don't have a lot of memories from that time as much. So pretty much what I'm trying to say is the majority of my life I've been thinking about Melee, participating in the Melee community, and just making it my goal to compete as much as I can, get involved as much as I can. So yeah, I would say just about 9 years now.
What was Apex 2012 for you like, if that was one of the first tournaments or the very first big major that you attended? Because that was something that we look back on now. It was obviously a while ago. It was even mentioned in the original Smash documentary when it was I think it was Isaiah versus Captain Jack, but Isaiah pretty much just sandbagged and then walked off the stage.
Right.
What was that experience like for you?
So it was really fun. I found it through Smashboards, which is a place that isn't used too much anymore, but it was on a regional Discord, and everyone's talking about it, how all these people were coming in. And back then, there were way less unified ways to find information about the Melee community and how things worked. So I had a lot of misconceptions. So for example, everyone that showed up, Armada, Mango, Mewtwo King, all those people, I didn't consider where they lived and how often they played. So I was oh, this just happens often. This will just be my usual tournament. It's at a college place, college events happen all the time probably. So I'll just see these guys in another couple months, right? Little did I know that everyone's from a different place all over the world, and it was kind of a Super Bowl of events. I didn't realize it until I got there. And another really funny thing that happened was so there were no player cams back in the day. And so, I had never really knew what people looked like. There were some interviews I knew those super duper famous people, but everyone else I was kind of confused on. So when I was a little kid, 14, I was obviously not very good. So I'd get on a setup and just get 4-stock by any Falco, and I would turn and be are you Zoo? And they're just like, no, I'm just like a guy from Pennsylvania. I'm like, oh, well. And I would just do that over and over and over. I was successful 2 times. I got 4-stocked by Luigi. I was like, are you Voodoo Jin? I was right. And then I got 4-stocked by Pikachu. I'm like, are you Axe? And he's like, yeah, I'm Axe. So I got some, but it was really like, it was definitely like, I was a big, what's the word? Very starry-eyed kid. Like, I would just like see the top players I did know and get like really scared. And when I was asking around for people, like, I was like, once they told me their names, I was also really scared. And like, I told like at least 100 people I was a big fan just because I had watched so many YouTube videos up until that point. I was such a fan of the game at the time, and not even thinking about like hardcore competing yet, that in my pool I had Kage and a bunch of other people. I played my matches, and in the middle of one of my sets, it's game 3, me versus this person, and behind me is the USA versus the World crew battle, and I think Axe is destroying Kirby Kaze, and literally in between stocks, I like turn around and scream at the top of my lungs, and my opponent's like, what are you doing? I'm trying to... You can't just scream. Like, we were playing a set. I'm like, oh, but it's so hype. Can we watch, please? Can we just pause it real quick? And they're like, no, I want to make it out of pools. And I'm like, all right, you can have the win. Whatever, I want to watch. Let's go, X! I, like, didn't understand any social cues. So, like, I think the best way to summarize is that I was just, like, awestruck. Like, I just wanted to see and appreciate everything. I wasn't even thinking about, like, oh, it's my goal to become really good at this game or whatever. I was just like, ooh, tournaments, people that I've heard a lot. This is crazy. And it was really fun. I was definitely big in like spectator mode, I guess.
It must have been really interesting that like it's a 5-year pro trying to crack like the top 20, and then in pools you're playing this kid who's going, oh my gosh, look at Axe destroying this Kirby Kaze. Oh, this is so cool. And you're like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, yeah, it was so funny. So it was the guy that I was 1-1 with was not Kage. Kage obliterated me, but it was just like a guy who, like, you know how it's like top 2 make it out. Like, he was going to be either 3rd or 2nd seed, so he needed to beat me, and I did take a game, and so I was just like messing with his whole thing, and he was getting super mad. But that was socially unaware Ryobeat in 2012. It was really hilarious.
When you would look around at some of the first events that you went to, including Apex 2012, I feel like people who would be around the 14-year-old bracket would be really interested in Brawl. And then in 2014 or so, when Smash for the Wii U got announced and started to get released, that would be like the game of interest. But you're playing Melee, so what was that like for you when you would have people your age going, why aren't you playing the newer ones?
Good question. So I actually did start with Brawl, not really competitively, so I would just play games with my brother all the time. I was pretty competitive with him because there was like this weird code of, you know, older brother, younger brother dynamic where like he wanted, so when I was like 8 or something, he was 5 years older than me, so like let's say 13. He would want to play games with his friends in his room, just with his friends, not with his dweeby younger brother. One, because, you know, he thought I was like, you know, cramping his cool 13-year-old style. And the other one was because he wanted to talk about like girls and drinking or something. He's like, oh, I can't say that around an 8-year-old. And I'm like, come on, Chris, I want to play with you. And he's like, no. And at one point he was just like, you can play with me if like you can beat me or something, but me and my friends are too good. Like, that's not what he actually felt. He just wanted me to leave him alone. So he made up a reason and said, you're just not good enough. Because he loved playing games with me when his friends weren't there. It's just that he wanted to hang out with his friends and do teenage things and not little kid things. Or little kid, like, talk. And so I would, like, practice extra hard to beat him. And I started beating him in a bunch of the games that we played, like Mario Kart and, like, Tony Hawk, oddly enough. And then Brawl as well. And I got really competitive with it. And then at some point he's like, oh, you know, I met this, like, person at my high school whose little brother is actually also really good at Smash. You got to play him. I'm like, okay, I'm down. So he was same age as me. We were, like, best friends afterwards until, like, high school. And I go to his house, and I'm like, oh, I got to beat you in Brawl. And I beat him, but he's like, oh, I don't even play that game. That's like the casual game. You got to play the real game, Melee. I'm like, okay, I'm down. And he beat me up in Melee, and I don't think he knew what the, like, techniques were or anything like that, like wave dashing, L canceling, that type of stuff. But he knew that, I think he was kind of like a hipster kid to some degree, him and his brother. Like they always played. They didn't want to play the newest game. They had a little bit of like, oh, I stick with the old stuff type of mentality. So I was like, fine. This guy had like a really cool like house to hang out in, and he had a lot of other friends that played Melee. I'm like, well, I don't really have a lot of friends that play Brawl, so okay, I'll play Melee. And so we would just go over and play all the time, like free for all, singles, all types of stuff. And I was still losing, and I was just trying every character. I was like, oh man, I really need to beat this kid. So I started looking up like advanced Melee or like pro player Melee, and then I found Genesis 1, which was super crazy, and I found Advanced How to Play by Wako7. That old video was like the Smash tutorials at the time, and I like figured out up throw rest, and I would just rest my friend who played Fox, but then he would go like Marth, and then that would beat me, and then I heard that Sheik would beat him, so I would go Sheik. Like it was like very early like Noob Slayer options that we were picking back and forth based off of these like little videos that we saw, and then eventually we got some tech skills. So like I definitely started to feel like, to answer your question about like seeing other kids around me like doing something different. On one hand, my friend group was very into Melee, but on the other hand, like it was pretty socially isolating because I think people like played like League, people played like Call of Duty, people played a bunch of other games, and like me and like my group of friends were just like the nerdy kids that were into this one thing that not only could like, a lot of gamers that are men, they don't talk to a lot of girls in general, so I didn't. But I also didn't talk to a lot of gamer dudes because I didn't play any games that they liked. Oh, also like Madden and FIFA and stuff like that. So we were kind of in our own like little world. So it felt a little isolating at times, but then I went to a tournament and I'm like, oh, like there are people that really like this just as much as me. That's cool.
Even if they were along like the 16-year-old, 18-year-old, and then there was probably even back in 2012 starting to be 20-year-olds and older people who had just been playing Melee ever since it came out, trying to go to majors.
Right, exactly. Like I think like PC Chris had to be like maybe 25, 26 at the time. He was at that event. Lots of, I don't think anyone like very, very notable in the Smash community I don't think there was a large portion above like the age of 30. Like I feel like we have a lot of like 28 and up players now, like a good amount. But back then it was like that was the rare thing. So I definitely saw a lot of like college age kids, like 21 to 24 was the main like demographic I saw. And like every once in a while I would see maybe there were like 10 kids like me where it was just like, they were there with their older brother that played, and they also like played a little bit. So I was definitely alone in that sense for sure.
So at what tournament or in what year did you start to feel like, oh, I'm starting to take some names now? There's people like, who's this Ryobeat Peach player? Like there's a buzz almost sort of a feeling. When did you start to feel that?
So oddly enough, like very early in my career, I actually got good quite fast. Well, I had like a weird like growth in Melee trajectory, which I'll get into in a bit later. But like I think after a year and a half, I was already taking big names. Like I started to go to some tournaments, and it was just really fun. And I was just kind of doing it like for the love of the game. I didn't really care about competing. I met J-Flex actually back when I was like 14. He was J-Sex at the time, which was super funny. And he used to destroy me while also being really mean to me at the same time. Like he would like taunt, he would like talk shit at me in person, and I was just like a 14-year-old kid. I'm like, no, you're being mean. And like he would like pause when he got an up smash. He was like, ooh, that hurts, doesn't it? I'm like, oh, I hate you. So like I got super salty, and so I really wanted to beat him, but also that just like generally woke up my fire. Plus like I was playing a lot of hours a day just learning the game. Like not because I was like, oh, I want to be the best, but just because like it was fun. And then that like little bit of competition started to come in, and then over time like the combination of being a little bit more competitive plus playing a lot of hours, I was really starting to get better and like not be 0-2, 1-2. Funny enough, back in the day, like the locals were so small, like once you're going 2-2 or 3-2, like you're already like close to PR. There weren't a lot of players. I think one of my first big wins was a player named T-Web, who used to be ranked in Tri-State at NYC back in the day. And I remember like beating him, and like my hands were shaking, and he was like, he had like a bunch of Johns. Like, oh, my hands are so cold, you didn't even beat me. Peach is my worst matchup. But I was just like, this is so sick. And I realized that like people started talking about me. It's like, oh snap, this little kid's just beating up people. and I think I just got like such a high from like being talked about. Honestly, like I really liked being a crowd favorite. I really liked being appreciated like very publicly. Like I think other people, I mean everyone like likes validation to some degree, but I really like crowds and excitement. Like I like, you know how everyone's like, oh, you know, Mango plays better on stream. I totally feel that way too. Like if I'm alone in the corner and no one cares about the match, I don't feel motivated. But like if everyone's talking about a match and everyone's hyping it up, like I feel excited to play, and I feel like I play my best there. And like New York City is a very notably loud, rowdy, shit talk region, and like that energy like really made me want to like keep playing. Just like, you know, beat up the people that like talk shit about me and like, yeah, I'm better than you, get fucked up, and just like kind of keep that energy alive. And yeah, I would say about a year and a half in, I was beating lots of low-ranked NYC Tri-State players. One I remember that was really big was Strychnine, if you know who that is. He's a Falco player from New Jersey, and he like had beaten West Balls at an Apex. He was like debatably, I think he was like around top 60-ish, and I 2-0'd him. He wasn't very good versus Peach 100%, but like he was like the first seed at this like New Jersey tournament. And I remember just like going on Facebook and like Smashboards, and people were like, "Oh my god, like Ryobeat actually beat Strychnine! Like, what is going on? He's supposed to win the tournament." And I remember feeling extra cool because I was playing Strychnine, and the first game it was a best of 3. I 3-stock him, and his like little friend that was sitting next to him was like, "Oh, Strick, do you have a fox? Please tell me you have a fox." I'm like, "That's right, baby. Please bring out your fox." It was so funny. But yeah, like everyone started like getting really excited about it. Some people were like, "Oh, you know, it's a fluke because he plays Peach, just down smash. That's why he's winning." Other people were like, "Oh, that's so sick. You know, this young kid getting good really fast." I didn't care if it was negative or positive. I just like talk. I've never been like a person that's like, you know, like super beat down by like shit talk or like, "Oh, I hate Peach." I like the social competitive energy, like negative or positive. As long as like people are talking and excited, like that gets me motivated. So like that's when I was just like getting good, and also like I don't want this to stop. Like I want to keep investing more time.
Do you think that, like, if it weren't for Melee, or maybe perhaps video games in general, like, the competitive fire that you've been talking about is, like, slowly being pulled out of you, where maybe when you were younger, it just wasn't something you were really interested in, like, quote-unquote competition, but the more you got into it and the more you had somebody next to you who was a little bit better, or maybe even a lot better, where you're going, oh, but I got to figure out how to beat that person, like, would you credit that all pretty much to Melee, or how would you think about the way that competition just has been something that you've started to care more about?
Yeah, totally. I definitely think like to connect like my competitive drive in Melee to like my childhood upbringing. Like I came from a family that was like, my parents were like, my parents were divorced, and like when I was a kid, they were like, you know, there was like alcoholics in the family, and they were fighting all the time, and like cops were called a lot of times, and like I was just kind of like a really scared kid, just like looking at them like fighting and watching like divorce stuff go on, and I was just like really scared. And then so I wasn't like the most, like I was pretty outgoing when I went to school. I was like talkative, but I never felt like I never wanted to like actively just like showcase something that like I love and like be passionate about my thing kind of loudly, because like I definitely had this feeling of like I don't want to do anything that upsets my parents, and I don't want to bother them, so like I'm just going to keep quiet about the things I do. And the other element that I think like is important to think about is like my older brother was like, at least in my opinion, I don't know if he watches this podcast and like talks about it, but we've talked about it a little bit. I think my parents like him a good amount more, particularly like when we were growing up. I think me and my mom and my brother are all super close now, and my dad is a whole different situation. But back in the day, everyone loved my brother because he played a lot of instruments. He spoke Spanish. We're Puerto Rican and Cuban. I don't speak Spanish. I don't play instruments. And he was very social around family and friends that came over the house. And I was just kind of like the video game kid. And I didn't really... You can't like showcase your love for video games. There's nothing impressive to show. Like, you know, if I show someone like me beating Mario 64 level, like an adult wouldn't understand that. A little kid doesn't really care. Even somewhere in between, like my age, like if they don't play that game, they don't really care. But like I think that my brother was a big absorber of like attention. So like he was, and not in the bad way, in the literal like, he played a lot of instruments for people. He played music. He impressed my parents with how much he knew Spanish. I was like, oh, this kid of ours is really performative, and also like he embraces his culture. We love that. And me, it was just like, you like video games. What is that? I don't understand it because I'm like older. And then that other aspect of like them divorcing. So like when I was at home, I was very like no personality shown, and when I was at school, like I had a little bit, but like as much as you could at like a school, and like as much as you could being like someone that plays video games. Even at school, I was kind of bullied for playing video games so much and being so obsessed with it. I think that a lot of kids like so I started with like a couple of people in my grade, like 8th grade, like maybe 6-ish people, and they all kind of dropped off one by one to do more normal high school things, like play more popular games, play some sports, go to like some little high school parties, even no recommendations, but they were doing some underage drinking, and a thing about me also is that I didn't start drinking alcohol, and I've never done any drugs, but the alcohol thing I haven't done till like last year. So I'm a very like vanilla guy throughout, even though I was like very social and like growing up, very, very vanilla. I didn't want to go to high school parties. I didn't want to play the mainstream games. I was social, but I just liked Melee. That was my only thing I did. I liked video games, particularly the older school ones, but Melee in particular. So like I was very just like, I had nowhere to like express this thing that I liked, and I never had an opportunity, even if I liked something else, to just show people what I like and have them just be like, wow, that's really cool, and just like appreciate me. But I think when I got competitive, like, or when I started doing Melee competition, like I already just loved the game, but then just like that feedback of like doing a cool combo and hearing people excited, or doing a little bit better in bracket and have someone be like, hey, nice run today. Like throughout my childhood, I had never ever had just like anyone really say like, one, I'm really interested in the thing you're doing, and two, like I'm excited to see you continue doing it, and even three, like I like seeing you do it, like visually, like I see you play the game, I'm having a good time, which is something like my brother had in like music, something that like my peers had, and like just liking more popular things, and that like feedback loop really like got me hooked on competition for sure.
Yeah, it's like somebody goes, that was a nice reverse fair to take that set, and you're like, oh yeah, you like that? It's no big deal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Totally. Yeah, I loved, like, I mean, I definitely consider myself a, very flashy player, and like that's kind of the reason I like doing it. I like doing the things that make people excited, and like obviously like it kind of came like over time, it was kind of just like a stylistic choice, and just kind of how I grew up to play. But like if I knew something was like exciting to do and people were watching, I would go for it. And like just because I like that feedback loop so much, I didn't think about it in the moment, but like indirectly I was definitely thinking just like I really like that people appreciate me doing my favorite thing and enjoying it, and like it's not weird to them, it's not foreign, it like makes sense, and they're having a good time.
When you have like an RNG miracle, like 2 Stitch Faces in a row or something like that, is that something you go, oh, I really need to make this count, this has to be hype, hopefully somebody's recording, or this is on stream? Like, do you feel that pressure? Or when you're in a bracket and you're playing a tournament match, you're thinking, okay, well, if we can make it happen, we'll make it happen, but otherwise I just try to win this game first? And maybe that's changed for you, but what do you think when you think of something kind of happening with like the turnip pulling shenanigans?
I think turnip pulling shenanigans, I don't have any particular like feeling towards. Like maybe once I pull like a bomb or a beam sword, I start giggling. I'm like, oh, I'm about to do some funny stuff to him. Like there was someone named Reno who I got like down tilt fully charged beam sword F smash, and the whole room was just like, oh, it was super fun. But like Stitch Faces, like it's kind of hard to make those fun. I just kind of need the damage and need the kill. But I think that brings me to another point of like, do I ever get nervous going for these types of things, or just kind of nervous about disappointing people in terms of like how they enjoy my play? Like yes and no. So like it definitely changed at a point in my career where Like, I've never been nervous or super nervous when people watch me perform and play. Like, that aspect is, like, fine. If anything, I enjoy it. Sometimes when there's a crowd, I even play better than if there's no crowd because, like, they re-energize me to, like, keep trying. But, like, I definitely think there was a point in time, like, once, you know, NPGR stuff started being in the works around 2015. And, to go back to the point of, like, how, or go back to the topic of, like, what my growth has been like in Melee. So I've been playing for 9 years, and, like, a year and a half in, like, I got really good, like, low ranked in my region, maybe, like, somewhere in, like, the 20 to, like, 12 area of, like, tri-state top 20. And I was always pretty good. But once I got to that point, I just kind of stagnated. And it was fine, you know, I wasn't really thinking about it too much. But then MPGR came around, and every year I would get a little bit better. Not at a crazy rate, but, like, you know, I'd go from 17th on the PR to 16th. Maybe I go back up to 18th, but then I go to 15th, like, nice and slow. But then at some point, someone's like, or a lot of people used to say, like, oh, wow, like, Ryobeat, you're getting, like, pretty good, you know? If you just get a top 100 win at a national, then, like, that's it. Like, you're going to be top 100. And I was just, like, so freaked out for some reason. Like, I think just, like, the pressure of being almost there and almost this big, alluring number with a picture attached to it was so scary to me. I wanted it really bad because obviously I was, like, very competitive. Like, this was about, like, 4 or 5 years into the game. But I think, like, if I could, like, tie together that with, like, a validation note, like, I think, like, when I wasn't thinking about it, I thought about it a little bit, but, like, I thought about it more and more as, like, the top 100 allure came around, is that, like, every time someone asked me that wasn't in the Melee community, like, what I do, like, why do I spend so many hours playing games, or playing Melee, and so many hours traveling, and so many hours just, like, analyzing in my free time, not hanging out with other people at high school, and stuff like that. Like, of course I'd say, oh, you know, because I want to play Melee, but they're like, okay, so what do you get from it, right? Like, the classic gamer question, are you getting paid, you know, that type of thing. And, like, maybe sometimes I got paid $80 per second once in a while, or at that point in my, like, being ranked time. And I could say I'm 17th in New York, but that's not, like, as tangible, and it's not as, like, you know, in the limelight, and hard to explain to people who don't understand. Like, oh, I guess that's cool. It's a lot of time, and, like, you're only, like, this good after 5 years. Like, but it's a hard game, as we all know. And I think every person who's been on the verge of top 100 can, at least in their own way, identify with the idea of, like, when you the idea of becoming top 100 is just, like, a sign that, like, not only did you make it in the Melee community, but you can show other people, like, tangibly that, like, your time was worth it. And, like, this was a good investment, and also just, like, you have, like, a shining little trophy that you can, like, hold up to people when they ask you the question of, like, what do you do with your time? And, like, even if, like, deep down, you know, or, like, let's say at the forefront, everyone's like, no, I play for, like, the love of the game. I play for this side and the other, and I do too, obviously. Like, I love the game, I love the community, and all that. Like, in the back of your head, there's, like, some, like, social element to it of, like, society, like, judging how you spend your time and how productive it is, that those types of things get you really anxious and upset and worried about every time you perform. And then, like, for me, like, I think when I was playing, so it was like my 5th year in the game or so is when top 100 started coming around, and they were like, oh, Nico, like, you're pretty close to getting it. I'm like, okay, yeah. And, like, 3 years in a row I didn't. Like, 1 year I was close, 1 year I was completely off, another one I was, like, meh, like, somewhere in between that. And I would just get unbelievably nervous at nationals, because that statement was always in my head. Oh, you just need one top 100 win. Because all your local wins are great, your regional wins are great, you just need that one national that'll really put you on the map. And I would get so nervous. Like, I was freaking out all the time. Like, I couldn't sleep. My hands would start shaking. Like, I would go into pools and just, like, I like, have lost, like, my round 1 in pools, being, like, a projected top 128 bracket player. And then I would always make a loser's run and then lose to, like, a really good player. But, like, I would always get incredibly nervous. Like, I would always lose to... I would always be upset at a national, and then over time I would like take game one versus top player, and then my heart would start racing at a national. I would like drop it. Like I think 2018, like I played 5 or 6 different top 50 players, and I brought them all to game 3, game 5, and I lost all of them just because I was like so nervous thinking about top 100 and like the idea of like you just need to do it once and then woohoo, you're going to be validated forever. So I guess to the point of like this is kind of like a little bit of a tangent, but like to the point of like, you know, performing for others, it kind of like became different once top 100 and PGR stuff was a thing. Like it started with like first year and a half was just like pure like starry-eyed kid just wants to like play as much as he can, and then after that it's like, wow, I like the validation of this. You know, some days are bad, but you know, at the end of the day I'm like really enjoying myself, and like losing feels a little bad, but like I rather play all the time. And then I just got really nervous about results ever since like the first time PGR came out.
So what was your first top 100 win?
So first top 100 win, I don't quite remember because like throughout my time playing Melee, throughout my time before I got top 100, I've always gotten some top 100 wins here and there at locals, at regionals. Like I can name, you know, just a couple of ranked players in my region.
Okay. But so you're talking about like at a major, like on stream, that kind of thing, where the Melee Stats Collective would actually see you.
Yeah, exactly. Which I do remember very vividly. Like that's how much of like a thorn in my side doing well at nationals was, because I think I probably had a top 100 level win starting like my third year playing Melee. And I would continue to get them over and over and over. And it was nerve-wracking, but not the same as like at a national. So funny enough, 2.5 years into the game, I probably had my first top 100 win. It wasn't until I want to say 2019 that I got my first top 100 win at a national. And I had already traveled to like 14 or 15 different majors. And I had already gotten like dozens of top 100 wins before that. It just took, 7 years to get one top 100 win at a national. It was so nerve-wracking. And even then I was just so nervous. I didn't think I'd do it. I had to play Ty at Genesis. He was the top 100 player I beat. And like I think I played him at Smash Camp and some friendlies, and I won every single one. And I was like, oh, this feels really good. You know, I love the Marth matchup. I played with a lot of Marths. And I always said if I were to get a top 100 win, I feel like I would have to beat a lower end top 100 Marth, because I love fighting Marth. And I saw the bracket and saw I had to play Ty. Like my heart turned in a knot, because I'm like, this is the perfect opportunity for me to get it, but I'm so nervous to just do it. Like even if I had the proof, I literally when I played friendlies with him, I won 90% of them. I was still so nervous. I was like, I am the biggest choker at every single national ever. But we play at Genesis. I think I only have 2 friends watching, and they're not even my close friends. And game 1, I win really solidly. I think I 2-stock, and similar to every other time I've played a really good player at a national, my heart just starts pounding. I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna do it. And it's just best of 3. Then he 3-stocks me the next game on Stadia, and then I'm like, ugh. No, I'm losing it again. I'm literally gonna throw it all away, I always do. And I just tried to tell myself, I had gone through so many mentality hurdles of things to tell myself, things to calm myself down. And I think the biggest things I told myself is just one thing I always tell myself till this day when I play Melee is just you have to play in the way that you practiced and the way that you think is good, even if you're scared to go for it. If I think the hardest option or a really difficult option is the best thing to do right here, even if I SD, I need to go for it, because I rather lose trying what I know is good than cheese something out and freestyle it. And so that's one principle I always try to give myself. And 2, I'm trying to think. There's that I generally told myself to just hold center stage, not go into the corner, so I don't get gimped. That's a gameplay one. And then just I think the other thing I tried to tell myself a lot is just if you're the better player, you will win. So your only goal is to just be a good player. There's nothing else. You just need to play good Melee. You don't. It's not about beating top 100 or top 100 number of this guy. It's not about beating like his name and what that means in the community. I just have to beat like Marth. I just have to play good Melee, and I just have to stick to the things I practiced. And whatever happens, happens. And like I tried to drill that in a lot, and then I won game 3. I think it was a 2-stock. I remember thinking the whole time, like I was at last stock, I'm like, I do not want to go to last stock. I'm gonna get gimped in SD somehow because I'm so nervous. And I pulled it out, and I was just like shaking, like my hands were on my face. I like looked at the floor for a bit. Like I couldn't believe it. I was completely just like, holy shit, I did it. Even though I knew it didn't mean like I was gonna get top 100 or anything. Like it was January of Genesis, or that Genesis 2019. So like, there's a lot more to be done. But I was just like, finally, I know that at the end of the day, I don't have to say I have a problem at nationals because I did it today. So like, I was just so happy with that. And then I went on to actually do really well in the bracket. I think I lost my next 2 matches, but I played versus Kells, and that was 2 last stock games. And then I played West Balls on stream in front of everybody, big crowd. And it was game 3 last stock, and it was really close. I won the first game, was a hit away from taking the second, and the third was still really close. And like I really felt like once I beat Ty that day, like so many nerves got released. Like I just needed like one data point to say that like I could do it at a national, and then like I could just like remind myself every time, like, no, actually you can do it because you did it at this point. And yeah, that was my first top 100 win at a national. That like I think of that as like one of the biggest moments of my like Melee career.
So when you see your tag at 73rd for the MPGR 2019 like top 100 rankings is like just so much validation for you, and something that you can say to somebody, yeah, I'm a top 100 player in this game that's like 15 plus years old, this game that a lot of people have played and have always kind of been like, oh, what if I was really good? But I've actually done that, so it's not a big deal. But like, let's see you try and do it.
Yeah, I was so ecstatic. I literally didn't sleep like 3 nights in a row when they were like announcing like 10 by 10, and I just like kept not seeing my name. I'm like, even though all my friends are just like, you clearly got it. Like everyone has you like in the 60s or 70s. You're fine. And I'm just like, I don't know. And then I got it, and like, I don't know. That day was so. Oddly enough, I went to a tournament and then got upset by 2 players. But like, I didn't even care. Like, I was just so happy. And it's funny because I think a lot of people say like, oh, once you're top 100, you have this like pressure on your back that you have to like uphold, like your rank and prove that you're good and all that, and like show that you deserved it. I've never ever felt that. Maybe time would have went on during quarantine and I would have felt that, but like, I never felt that way. I feel like once I got top 100, I'm like, I am proud of what I've done in Melee, and if I never play again, like, I can say I had my moment, and like, that was enough for me. So I think that like being top 100 just like made all the years of like, oh, was this worth it? What do people think about me and all this stuff? Like, I was like coming to terms with it and all that, and like, trying to work it out even without being top 100, because maybe I don't get it, but like, definitely, like, one of the best things I've done playing Melee. And it's something that, like, just kind of sticks with me for a while. It's like a thing I can say I did at a point in time. Like, if I don't play the game for 5 years or something, it's like, oh, what'd you do when you were 20? I'm like, yeah, I, like, really grind this game, traveled the country, and at one point, I was 73 in the world. And, like, that's so cool to think about to me.
That's absolutely, I mean, like, just thinking about something like that for me, or anybody who has had like the actual story play out, because I've never been top 100 anything, blah, blah, blah. I'm probably not even top 100 Melee podcaster, but the point is that you did all of the things that you needed to do to get to that point, and then you succeeded. And yeah, there's other things going on in life that are very important, and paying bills and going to school, doing the life stuff. But the fact that it starts off as a hobby or something that you're really interested in and that you're passionate about, and turning it into something that you're competitive about, to have that be tangibly visible, to say, I was and am really, really good at this game. I'm
Yeah.
so happy that worked out for you. And it sounded to me, because you do look back on that now as being a really big deal for you. And of course it is, regardless, but especially in the wake of you starting to take more of a step back from Melee, where you're not going to be going to 5 majors a year, even as COVID restrictions continue to lift, and hopefully we continue to move into an era where IRL events do become more regular, especially majors, but that you won't be necessarily doing that. You won't necessarily be going to the locals every week. So for you, what have been some of the thoughts that you've had, like especially more recently, of just like what your relationship has been to the game and to the community?
So I think quarantine really, like, I think gave everyone kind of like a really introspective period for themselves. And like, I think when you lose out on a year and a half of your life and you just like have to stay inside and like cancel a lot of things that you were planning and doing, like having a lot of setbacks, things that I think one thing that I really realized also is there are some, well, it shows that, you know, how precious time is, but also like that there are some things in time that you can't get back. Like there are some things you can only do for certain periods of time. So for example, something I think about all the time that's like not the biggest deal in the world, but I didn't go to my high school prom because I was like going through some relationship drama and I was just like, I'm too sad, I don't want to go, I'm just going to stay home. And then I think about that, I'm like, no, like I didn't have a final chance to like, you know, say goodbye to my classmates that I like had known for many years and have a good time one last time and celebrate that. And that's something like I think about, it's like, yeah, that is something I literally cannot go back and do. Like there's no way. Like unless I somehow go back to high school. Well, I'm going to be a high school teacher, so I will go to a prom, but it won't be that prom. But nonetheless, like there's some things you can only do for certain periods of time because, you start at age 0, then you go to 80. And there's like things for like different age periods, if that makes sense. Like there's your, middle school life, and then your high school life, your college life, your first couple years at a job, then you go to a new job, then you
first relationship,
yeah, first big relationship, maybe like married, maybe kids, maybe move to a new state, like a lot of things, retirement also, and none of them being worse than the other. Like I feel like sometimes, people say like, oh, your young years or whatever, but there's a lot of specific things to like being age 30 to 40 that are really cool, 40 to 50, 50 to 60 that like you don't really have. Like I imagine like as you get older, you have grandchildren, so now you're like the big like figure of your whole family. Like that's something unique to that age that's really cool. And like all ages kind of have those things, and I think as quarantine happened, I reflected on like a lot of my time, and I'm like, what did I do with my time? Like, when what have I lost out on? Because I didn't get to go to nationals anymore. I was like at the peak of my game. I would say that like I was like top 40 in the world-ish when quarantine ended, if I was thinking about like my last 6 months of results. And I think about Melee, and like genuinely, like I'm just like, I did everything right with Melee. Specifically Melee. Obviously, there's other things like I wish I went to more college parties and was a little bit more social in classrooms. But specifically with like, how did I spend my time in Melee? 10 out of 10, I have no regrets. Everything I did was, I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud to have known other people who are amazing and like travel all around the country, make friends all around the country. My roommates are smashers. A lot of job opportunities I've gotten from our smashers. A lot of smashers have shown me new things. I've run charity events and been on podcasts like this and met new people, and just so many things I've done with Melee. I've got ranked. I've like helped new people get better. Coaching, all different types of experiences in Melee. 10 out of 10. I used my time very well in the Melee community. And I think as time goes on, I realize that like, well, one, that time is kind of coming to a close. Not because I'm definitely like less passionate about Melee these days than before. I think quarantine is part of it. I think, the realization I'm starting my career is part of it. But outside of just pure competitiveness, like there is a certain amount of like traveling and like craziness that you can do that you're young, like in college and high school, that you can't do as you start your career. And also I think about it, I'm like, I am actually really excited about my career. I really am excited to be a high school teacher and to like serve a specific community of school children and working with their parents and their families and trying to give them like an equitable experience. It's like, all that stuff. And I think because, in my opinion, like quarantine has shown me that like, life has like all these little periods. I don't want to just spend my entire life doing Melee as my number one priority. Like I'll always have Melee in my life because of just how much my life has been Melee. And I'll always try to help in as many ways as I can. And I'll still enter tournaments. I'll still practice here and there. I'll still post combos and all that stuff. But like, I don't want it to be my number one priority anymore because I realize that like, by playing Melee the way I've played it and like really like thrown myself in and explored and like talked to lots of different people and done a lot of experiences, I've gotten such a 10 out of 10 feeling, life satisfaction, everything from Melee. And now thinking about like if I brought my Melee energy to any other thing, like what new things could I learn about, what new people could I meet, what new experiences could I have. And yeah, I think like, and I am passionate about other things like, teaching and stuff like that. So like, I want to put more energy into that for that reason. Just to like have a lot more experiences, especially knowing that like, if I never played Melee again, I know that I had like the limit of amazing experiences. Like I can't think of something in Melee particularly that I'm like, dang, if only I did that. Like I really did everything. I've worn a lot of different hats in the community. I've been commentator guy, or not commentator. Well, I've done, local commentary, top player guy. I've been community leader guy, donation TO guy, like lots of different stuff. And I don't regret any of it, and all of it was really great. So like, I want to do lots of other things. I want to do that exact thing in other fields, if that makes sense.
So to talk about your passion for teaching and what you look forward to that, I think a great way to sort of combine it with Melee is how you were the coach to Catbug, and there was this event that recently happened here. I want to get the name right. Yes, the team combo event. So do you want to talk about that a little bit and like what your philosophy behind teaching Melee or just teaching in general is?
Yeah, so the way I view teaching is like, I think there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but like the short end version of like how I feel about teaching is like, teaching is something you teach someone a skill or thing that like you feel pretty passionate about and that you think not only are you good at, but that you think is valuable in life and stuff like that. So like, I think literacy is something that everyone should know, and everyone should know how to like, write fluently, create arguments, analyze texts, be well versed in a lot of different like types of people and backgrounds and themes and that type of thing. And like Melee also think is an amazing thing to do. It's like a great competitive outlet, really fun. I love the community, all that stuff, and that is just one part of teaching that I think is really cool. Also, the philosophy of teaching, how do people learn best, that type of thing. But what I really like about teaching, the things I like, and teaching in general and how it works with like people and their identities is just like, I think that teaching is a part of being a role of a community. And like the Melee community has always been like my home. It's a place that like I've met all my roommates and friends and like inspirations and people that have taught me things from all around the country and all that stuff, all that good stuff. And I think that like in many ways I am a student to them. Like I think when I think of my own teachers, like it's not just, the people that taught me how to wave dash, it's the people that, showed me where I can get the best food in New York City, where like I think of Prague is someone who like really has talked a lot about like social issues in Smash that like really taught me how I wanted to view it. There were my TOs that like, would scrounge up some money to help me go to tournaments or just like, help me be at a local safely as a kid. And that's all part of like, I consider that as part of being a teacher and part of being like a leader and a role model. I think teacher can like kind of commingle with those words. And so I really care about building a great community. And when I teach, I think that's one part of it. In Melee, in a much smaller scale, because there's so many different roles you can have. Like, if I wanted to be the most influential role in the Smash community, I would be a TO. Teaching Melee, I just happen to be pretty good at, and I think there's like a low amount of people that are teaching Peach, so like I want to do that. Plus, a nice little bit of money here and there is also good. But being a high school teacher is you have to do so many things. You're accountable for thousands of kids and their families, and you need to know their backgrounds, and you need to know about like their socioeconomic situation, how they learn, and the skills that they learn in school are going to carry out into how they have their careers, and the way that they form social interactions are going to like translate to how they're going to be as adults. So like, I'm facilitating that in my classroom, facilitating it at the extracurricular activities. I'm teaching that through the books I'm going to teach in English. All that stuff I like categorize as like building a very like tight-knit community where everyone supports everyone to do the thing that they want to do in like in a broad term. So like that's what I'm really passionate about in teaching. I pick English because it's just kind of, I think it's something that like you can really translate to like bigger world things, and it can help students like think about like identity and like just like community in general. Like I think I like math more. Like that's more fun for me, but I like the relatability of English. But honestly, like if I couldn't be an English teacher, like I think some English teachers like, oh, I would go be a writer or an editor. Like I would go be a school counselor or an extra like a summer program person or a like someone that like facilitates a big community space, particularly for youth, because I care about that and I really liked my upbringing in youth, and I think it allowed me to do a lot of the things I do today and know about today. So like just that like, I don't know, ecosystem of like one like a group of people that like take care of the newer people and like show them the ropes in a lot of different ways so that they can pursue their thing is like a big thing I always think about. And so that's how like teaching kind of works into this.
You're going to be like an awesome, fantastic teacher, Ryobeat. Holy cow.
Thank you. Well, one thing I worry about is that I don't know my content that well. I'm not that great at English. Or like I'm good at English, but I'm not like, I'm not the Shakespeare guy. Like I don't like know the book that deeply, and I don't know. I'm not like super prepared to like teach yet. I think I have like a lot of good ideas, and my philosophy is like in the right place. But like, yeah, that's what I care about. I care so much about like the classroom environment, and like the subject is one thing to me, but I really care about like community and building stuff like that. Like that's what I think about all the time. And it's like whether that's a school, whether that's like a town, whether that's a gaming community, like that ecosystem of everyone taking care of each other is like what I'm really passionate about.
I mean, I would love to ask more questions, but we are getting close to the end of our time here. So I want to make sure that you offer any other closing thoughts that you want to give, and also to tell the people where they can find you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on this. I've definitely seen the podcast a bit floating around my timeline. I'm like, oh, I'd actually love to be on that. This looks super cool. So thank you for having me. My Twitter is @Ryobeat, so I won't be streaming too much because, teaching can be like a pretty public job, and a parent could be like, oh, he's listening to this song that talks about drugs, and well, now we're going to tell a principal. It can be complicated, so just to be safe, I'm going to lay low on the public side, but @Ryobeat will be just about gameplay and Melee community-related opinions, so safe place to follow me, that I'll be pretty open. And outside of that, closing thoughts? Yeah, I don't know. This was a really fun interview, just kind of thinking about my whole time in Melee and thinking about like all the different ways I've explored it, and it just makes me really excited to like see the next generation of community members and thinking about like more things I want to do in the Melee community that like promote that, because like I don't know, how I see it is like, I mean, there's a chance that like I like rekindle my top player drive and I get even better than I have been, or I consistently become good and I want to enter more. But I'm very happy with like my time as like a good player. But it would be so sick if I could like be a TO or a local TO or a local commentator, something like that. A TO or a commentator, I think, would be really nice. Just to like bring up new players. I think that's like really cool to do. And every time I like what usually motivates me is just thinking about like, I had a really sick time in the Melee community, and I had a lot of TOs and friends and commentators and top players that like made my time so worth it and fun that like I just wanted to make sure that everyone else has that time.
There's really not much more for me to say other than I don't know you like super personally other than this conversation that we're having, but I just wanted to tell you like how much I admired the way that you would go to bat for people, like people who either didn't want to speak up a lot for themselves or had a harder time speaking up for themselves, you were always someone who said everyone deserves to be here. There might be this thing where someone isn't as welcome because there's not the cool factor, or they're not good at pressing the buttons good factor, or what have you. But you remember those times where you were sort of like, not necessarily like a big outcast and had to like fight your way into the community or anything, but you just remember the times where you were the new person on the block and trying to bring up the next people, and also to say, hey, this group is kind of been marginalized against, and I would like to speak up on their behalf. Like the way that you've done that and just gone against the black hole that is Smash Twitter, I just have to say it's very admirable of you that you did that, and that you feel like strongly enough to say, I want this to be a safe, welcoming space, and I want to be part of making that happen. I know that won't be as easy to do moving forward, but just like the way that you did that in 2020 in particular, again, wanted to say how much I admire that, and we'll miss you being regularly involved in Melee, or at least for my part, I'll be missing you, Ryobeat.
Thank you. Yeah, I just feel like, I always just bring it back to just like, if you love like the Melee community, and if you love what it's done for you, it's like, it feels just like the right thing to do to make sure that people can have that. Like, in our community, and like a lot of gaming communities, it's like, LGBTQ people and women are the sections that don't get to have the same time as us for many different reasons. And I just think about the fact of like, like I was able to like go to hotels with random people and driving people's cars, and like thinking about like, women feeling really not great doing those things, or they go to a tournament and have to wonder about like someone just like saying, oh, you're this good for a girl, do you have a boyfriend? Like, that sucks, because if I was a woman, I would not be where I am. I'd probably quit the game. I'd probably go do something else, when it could have been what it is for me now, which is just like everything. So I'm always really happy to speak up for those people, and definitely appreciate your appreciation for me doing that. It's definitely something I'll continue to do in the ways that I can, and I'll definitely, I've heard lots of like, oh, like we'll miss you and stuff like that. And like, I really appreciate it. And I love, the love I've been receiving, but also don't worry, I'll be around. I'll always be on Twitter in some way. I'm addicted to that stupid app. But like, if I'm not that public, you'll see me at events like volunteering and helping TO a pool, or DMing someone who is at the lead of everything and maybe giving some advice, or doing stuff in a Discord. No matter what, the Melee community always has my heart, so I'll be here in one way or another.
Oh, I love hearing that. All right, well, one more time, Ryobeat, thank you so much for joining me on Bottom of the Smash Mountain.
All right, thank you so much for having me. I'll catch you later. Bye.
Why is it so quiet? Oh, right, transition. Woohoo, we made it. So I hope you enjoyed that interview with Ryobeat. Sorry for losing my train of thought in the beginning, but as you can see, as you can hear, I am okay at carrying a conversation, but I'm not always on point with the introductions. So what do we have to talk about? First of all, Summit 11 is happening right now. That's right. We've already had the Olympic doubles. We've had 3-on-3 basketball. They're doing the obstacle course right now. Oh, man, I'm just going to say it. Hey, look, when you have one of the best or one of the most popular streamers on Twitch, on the platform itself, raid your stream, what do? Well, if you're the BTS Smash Twitch streaming team, what you do is you have the people on the couch talk about how awesome the obstacle course is going to be for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then you go to commercial break. That's audience retention. Hey, look, there are things that happen outside of the BTS's team control, and this was just one of those instances where I guess they weren't ready to start right away to kick the entertainment into gear. And of course, a bunch of the people who were on Ludwig's stream are going to leave right away, regardless of what's happening. I mean, unless there's, I don't know, unless there's like an explosion of some kind, like, hey, look, firecrackers. And then the 10,000 short attention span people would go, oh, okay, all right, now I'm going. That's probably what was going to happen regardless. But still, I was thinking to myself at the time, I want to watch this obstacle course. And they came back from commercial break, and this is great. And we're going to get to see the first round of, more commercial break. And it was then punctuated by the fact of, oh, wow, Ludwig Raid. This is great. A lot of people are going to get to see Smash stuff, perhaps for the first time. And it's going to be an obstacle course, so it'll be a little weird. But that doesn't matter because the personalities of this game will show. And Melee, long live Melee. And it just didn't happen. So I was feeling a little miffed about it. And I told my wife that I wasn't going to complain about it on my podcast, but here we are. That's my B. So that was the one thing that I wanted to talk about. I also wanted to talk about some other things that have happened that I have not yet had a chance to react to. One of the people that had been accused of things last summer came out with a statement today, so won't name names or anything. If you want to do your investigative research, you can go on the internet and find out, but I have not yet gotten a chance to watch it, so I'm going to save what limited thoughts I want to offer until afterwards, but that did happen, just to let you know. And I am also trying to remember if I have anything else that I wanted to mention. Let's see. We had some family pictures come through for my entire family. We were all together this past weekend for the first time in forever. That was why there was limited episode production last week, by the way. Just for those of you who like to keep up, I normally try to do 3 podcast episodes a week, but I did not do 3 podcast episodes last week because of family being in town. And it was really fun, and we got to have pictures, and the pictures came back today, and they were so adorable. They were so adorable. Will you get to see any of them? No, you will not. I have made a point of not really uploading pictures of myself, but especially not pictures of my kids. So there's that, but they're adorable, trust me. Super, super cute. Maybe someday when they're old enough to consider these things and then say, you know what, Dad, we're cool with it. You can post pictures of us. Then maybe I'll go from there, but not until I get to have that conversation with them. And not as like a 4-year-old, you know. My daughter, Ellie, she's the oldest. She's 3. So do you really think you can ask a 3-year-old that kind of a question? She barely understands the concept. She does understand it somewhat. She's aware that there's a thing that mommy and daddy go on sometimes on their phones, but hasn't really settled in quite yet. What's the next generation after the Zoomers? Because anyway, before I dive into a rabbit hole about what age group my daughter is supposed to be in, let's talk about, okay, oh man, I had this locked in my head and then I talked about my daughter too much. Oh, right. We're moving. I've already mentioned this to some of y'all, but we're moving from one part of Lancaster County, Lidditz, to another in Mountville, so that's exciting. We are going to be moving in a few weeks on July 31st, so that's very exciting. We're going to settle on Friday, July 23rd. That's also very exciting. These are just details that I'm really jazzed about, because with moving into our own property that we are signing a mortgage for in order to own and escrow, all those fun adulting terms, that means that I, along with my wife, will become property owners. That's right. It's going to be in her name too. Hello, 21st century. Hello. And we're going to have das Internet. So I'm very excited about that. And that means that I'm going to try to do some video stuff specifically. I'm not sure what that all is going to entail just yet, but I want to do video stuff. So at the very least, I'm thinking of trying to, of course, incorporate video of some kind onto the podcast so that you can see my medium grade average boy face while talking with some of these people that I have on for interviews. I'm sure that there will be some people who prefer to be audio only, and that's cool. But I think that the majority of them are like, yeah, video's fine. I was planning on doing that anyway. I mean, a lot of people, okay, let me rephrase. I've gotten some questions from some people before about why don't you do video? And I go, well, I don't have internet at the apartment, so that's kind of challenging, and that's a whole thing. And they just go, oh, okay. And they don't want to hear more information, but because I'm nervous before we start interviewing, I give way too much information. So that's a fun little fact about me. I start talking more when I get nervous. All right, I think I have covered everything now. I should have prepared my notes. Typically I do, but then sometimes I also do this where I get annoyed and then I just go, well, that's a good enough space to be in for podcasting. At the very least, I'm bringing a tad more energy than tired boy Jesse, who can sound like this a little bit. It's not as engaging. You gotta be engaging. All right. Now that we're all done with the intro and we have done enough of talking for the outro, let me give you a call to action. Do subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice, or if you like to do the YouTube thing, if you're on YouTube right now, drop a comment or press like, press subscribe. Did you know that? No, I'm kidding. I wanted to give one more shout out to Firepuff12. The interview of ours right now has over 200 views, and I suspect that has a lot to do with All-Star Brawl being in the title. Hey, that's a big deal, apparently. Nickelodeon making their own platform fighting game. A lot of people seem to be interested in that at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that's part of it, but I know that the Fire Nation is strong. I know that Firepuff12 rightly should, by the way, inspires the masses. So I want to say thank you for giving me my most successful YouTube video yet. And I also want to say thank you to SprintingLegs, who I can't do this without. She helps out with that stuff. So thank you, SprintingLegs. And that's about it. I truly am done. So we'll catch you next time. And I hope that you come back. All right. Peace.